Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at the best new Shadow Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, and that is Shadow Malamar. Now, I was extremely lucky this morning. On only my second Shadow Inkay check, I was able to get an absolutely cracked IV Shadow Malamar to 1511, which is the rank 26 for the Open Great League. Now, Shadow Malamar is banned in the Retro Cup, so I did some practice battles in the Open Great League with members of my Discord, and it's safe to say this is a must-have Pokemon for the Open Great League. So without further ado, let's hop out of the matches, and let's go Shadow Malamar. Hopping into game number 1, leading Shadow Malamar into Talonflame. Talonflame is going to look to strike first here. They're going to go for the fly. I'm more than happy to commit the shield, and I can farm up to the back-to-back foul plays. Shadow Malamar will hit very, very hard. Foul play is going to land. I could have actually farmed down there if they stayed in, so they're forced to pivot out into Furret. Furret is now going to be hit with a superpower. There's a switch into the Tinkaton to catch their Swift, and we are in a really good spot in game number 1. Furret, of course, is going to be completely walled here. Furret will fire off some energy, and I'm very okay with that, because I'm just going to look to overfarm as much as possible, and then go for the Play Rough. Play Rough will not quite knock out, but it can potentially set up a farm down for me here. Switch Clock should be up soon for my opponent. There it is, and back in comes the Talonflame, but they're low enough from the Malamar that I can just throw a Bulldoze here. They end up committing the shield, and I'm more than happy just to let the Tinkaton go. Opponent is going to go for the Brave Bird, but now I get energy on the Shadow Malamar. And Shadow Malamar energy just goes absolutely everywhere. If they bring in the Furret, I'm switching, but they bring in Serperior. And look at this damage. Serperior is known for being very bulky. Superpower absolutely rocks it. And now I can just bring in the Diggersby. Diggersby is going to be shielding up because obviously a Frenzy Plant will hit much harder than a Trailblaze will hit from the Furret. And now I just get to return fire with the Fire Punch. Fire Punch into Serperior is going to set up a nice farm down for the Diggersby. And there's just not enough damage available on this Furret to take the win. So we're going to take game number 1. Picking up a bad lead in game number 2, Shadow Malamar into Azumarill. While Shadow Malamar does win the 2 shield here, I would much rather bank the energy and try and catch the Play Rough. I'm unsuccessful with the Play Rough catch, but I would still rather take a super effective Ice Beam on the Diggersby than take a super effective hit on the Shadow Malamar. My opponent makes an interesting play here. They don't throw right away, so they may be looking to try and bank this energy and switch, and that's exactly what they're going to do. They're bringing in their own Malamar. I overfarm slightly here, trying to bait them into superpowering instantly, because obviously if they're debuffed and have no energy, then Tinkaton's going to be absolutely incredible, but they're not going to fall for it. I did end up getting the Scorching Sands attack drop here. I'm going to switch into Tinkaton. They should have gone for the foul play, because that's all that was needed to KO the Diggersby, so we catch the debuff foul play, which is quite nice. And I'm very comfortable here just committing to a farm down. Opponent goes for another foul play. Superpower would have been better there. And now they're going to send in Swalot. They were debuffed, but either way, being able to hit for neutral damage there would have been preferred. The Bulldoze does actually get the attack drop there. A 50-50 that does go our way. But Swalot's charge attacks are completely walled here. Clocks up. In comes the Shadow Malamar. And look at the Psywave damage in this matchup. The Sludge is going to land, and Swalot is just getting absolutely melted. I get to go for the foul play. Foul play is not a great move, but it does big damage there. They're going to bring in their own Malamar. I can't risk them getting to a move, so I overfarm, and then I'll look to pick up the knockout with the foul play. In comes the Azumarill, and look at Shadow Malamar go. If you do have a high defense Shadow Malamar, there's a bubble bulk point that you can get where bubbles actually do 1 less damage, and this Malamar does have it. So in this instance, they're unable to bubble down. I get both shields, and now I get to send in the Tinkaton to snipe down with a Play Rough. Play Rough is going to pick up the KO. Swalot is going to get Fairy Winded down, and from a bad lead, we actually win with both Protect Shields remaining. Let's move to the next match here, leading Malamar into the Fortress. Fortress, pretty slow to get to charge moves, so I will get to strike first here with the foul play, and that just does such big damage. Rock Tomb will not knock out here, but Shadow Malamar, I do really want to try and preserve some HP. Look at the Psy Waves as well here. Like, the damage this thing outputs is just absolutely ridiculous. To me, I feel like we haven't really had a must-have Shadow that dropped in a while. This is a must-have Shadow Pokemon. During this event, make sure to go out, battle those Psychic Grunts. I believe it's the male Psychic Grunt. And then make sure to try and get a good IV Shadow Malamar, because this thing was absolutely disgusting in practice. My opponent is unable to get a farm down. They're forced to fire off some energy here. They are on Ice Punch, and now I'm going to send in the Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar could have gone for the foul play there, but I decided that I'd rather give up a shield in exchange for a ton of energy, because Shadow Malamar energy can usually go pretty far into just about anything. Opponent going to bring in Shadow for Alligator, and I'm at back-to-back superpowers. Superpower number 1 is going to be shielded, and for superpower number 2, keep in mind, this is debuff damage. I have lowered my attack. Superpower lands, look at the damage, and now this is going to be a really interesting game. My opponent is 2 off of their game-winning Hydro Cannon. I'm going to do 1, pause, we're able to hold on to the energy, and now we just get to build up to the back-to-back bulldozes, and we're going to be able to take this game 1 win. So the game actually visually updated when I waited. A miracle has occurred, and thanks to that, we're going to take the game with back-to-back bulldozes as down goes for Alligator. Feraligatr is going to return in the next match. This time it is going to be the regular Feraligatr. I do think this is a matchup where it will feel a lot less comfortable as Malamar, specifically if it's the Shadow, because a Hydro Cannon from a regular Feraligatr already does that much damage, so a Shadow might just straight up KO the Malamar. I'm going to send in Diggersby. Opponent now going to send out a Shadow Superior, so the opponent bringing out a little bit of spice here. Definitely sad that the Superior got aligned onto the Diggersby, because obviously I'd much rather have it on the Tinkaton, but this is a Diggersby. I don't care that this is a Shadow Frenzy plan. It is not knocking out Diggersby. Diggersby is just too bulky, and we're able to make Fire Punch number 2. I'm hoping they shield, but they're smarter than that. They are not going to let that happen, and now they're going to send in Shadow Drapion. I bring in Tinkaton, and I lag by a turn, meaning that I do not sneak a Fairy Wind. So now I am 1 Fairy Wind behind where I'm supposed to be. That's not ideal. In comes Feraligatr. I'm definitely going to need energy on the Tinkaton, so I'm going to shield here, and then I'm going to switch into the Malamar. Malamar is going to get a Psy Wave down. Something that I could have potentially done there was pause when they were at 1 HP to take 1 extra Shadow Claw to limit the farm. They're going to be shielding the superpower anyway, and now I'm back in with the Tinkaton. This time, I actually don't think that I got 1 turn, which is nice. I do have a very high rank Tinkaton, and I'm going to need every last bit of health if I want to win this game. Bulldoze gets the debuff, but it's not going to matter in this game because I can't get a farm down. I just need to get to the back-to-back Bulldozes. Opponent is going to go for the Aqua Tail. They have another, and oh my goodness. I don't think this will knock out, but the Poison Sting after might be enough to KO. Let's see. Come on. Tinkaton, hang on here. We survived, so thank goodness that 1 turn lag that cost us a Fairy Wind earlier does not cost us the game, as Tinkaton takes the win with 1 health remaining. Shadow Malamar into Shadow Drapion in the next match. I'm just not going to let them throw a move at the Malamar. I'll catch it onto the Diggersby and get a sneak as well. They ended up Aqua Tail baiting, and now they're going to send in a regular Feraligatr. Regular Feraligatr will not be able to knock out here with a Hydro Cannon. I'm going to fire off the Scorching Sands. We do get the attack drop, which is quite nice, as now it's definitely not going to be enough to knock out. So more than happy to let this through. The Hydro Cannon is going to land, and now I will fire off the Fire Punch. I know this doesn't knock out, but I realized from the health range that the Feraligatr was at, I didn't think that I could Psy Wave down. So I would rather just land the Fire Punch, and that way I can guarantee a Psy Wave down for the Malamar. Opponent sends out Talonflame, and I'm so happy that they brought in the Talonflame here, because obviously I have a Tinkaton in the back. That would be so bad. My opponent is going to farm up a ton of energy, switching into the Drapion. I get to bank both moves and make a catch onto the Tinkaton of this Aqua Tail, and now Tinkaton just gets to absolutely dominate the Drapion matchup. In this matchup here, they're about at a health range where I can just knock out with a Play Rough, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I am going to overfarm by 1, full send the Play Rough here, expecting my opponent to try and call a bait, and if it's not in foul play range already, which I don't think it is, after a Bulldoze, it should be. Foul play plus a few Psy Waves, so I can fire off the Bulldoze. Whether I get the debuff or not, this game's over because I'll get to throw a couple Psy Waves and the move, and then after they shield, throw a couple more Psy Waves and the move. I think I only do 2 Psy Waves in the move there, but I was pretty confident it was going to knock out here. And the foul play into the Talonflame, we do get a little bit of a pause here, but it is enough to knock out the Talonflame, and we get another 2 shield flex. We move to the next match. Shadow Malamar, Shadow Jump Bluff, Safe Switch Diggersby, but it's a simultaneous Safe Switch. Oh no, that is so unfortunate for my opponent. They were trying to make a catch on a Drapion. I was trying to make a catch on a Diggersby. Here I go for a Fire Punch bait, expecting them to commit to this matchup, but they don't. They end up letting that go, so that proves to be a bit of an unfortunate bait for me. They're going to go for another Aqua Tail. I know Fire Punch will not knock out here, so I'm just going to full send it to Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands into the Drapion is going to pick up the KO. Their final Pokemon is revealed to be Lapras. I should be in a pretty nice position here. My opponent is going to get a big farm down with the Lapras, but I can bring in the Shadow Malamar, and then I'm just going to click Foul Play, because they're probably going to go for the catch here, and they do go for the catch. So I get to Foul Play into them, and then switch out into the Tinkaton. But I actually one turn lagged on bringing here, because switch takes a turn, so they shouldn't be able to switch and CMP tie there. So unfortunately, one turn bring in means that the clocks get really misaligned here by 2 charge moves instead of just 1, and that is definitely not ideal. Tinkaton is, of course, going to have a very dominant matchup here, but the tricky thing is I can't really ever farm down at this health range. There's the switch into the Lapras, and I do have a ton of energy, so I am going to commit the shield. Unfortunately, due to the fact that my opponent was able to CMP sack due to the one-turn lag earlier, my clock is not up, so I'm forced to throw a move. They call the Bulldoze bait, and my goodness, just everything going wrong in this game that can go wrong. They are now going to fire off the Sparkling Aria, and I think, unfortunately, I have actually lost this game, because I can't get the farm down with the Shadow Malamar. Maybe I had to commit to it, but I realized they were getting to a move, so I throw the Foul Play. They're going to end up shielding, and this is the Ice Beam. Ice Beam should put me into farm down range here. I have to hope that I can make the Foul Play. I get it, but the fast move KOs, and we will unfortunately lose that game. We see a tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Malamar against Pangoro. This is a matchup where Psywave is resisted, but if you look at this Pangoro, it's getting absolutely deleted. Shadow Malamar does 3 damage per Psywave instead of 2, compared with the regular Malamar against Pangoro. So Pangoro, despite resisting this move, it's already basically almost at half HP off of resisted fast moves. I'm going to double shield close combat, so they're going to pivot out and send in Lapras. I know that I need to preserve the Malamar here. I'm expecting Malamar is going to have a ton of play versus them in the end game. Superpower, just absurd amounts of damage, and I'm going to throw away the Diggersby here. I know Diggersby is not going to have a good matchup against the Pangoro, and I'm throwing it away to the extent that I'm not even Fire Punching, because I don't want to give this Pangoro farm. Instead, I'm just going to throw this Fire Punch after I take 2 Arias and undercharge it, because all I want is farm on Shadow Malamar. So now I get to send back in the Shadow Malamar, get a little bit of extra energy. In comes Pangoro. They try and catch, and they send in Wheezing. And watch the damage on this Wheezing, by the way. I get to fire off Foul Play. That does half their health. That's a resisted move. I get to throw another Foul Play. They're barely hanging on. I get the switch into the Tinkaton, as my opponent is going to fire off a Brutal Swing. And I am just much too healthy on this Tinkaton. Pangoro, at this point, they're just going to realize a close combat will not knock out. They would need a Night Slash boost into a close combat, and then they don't have the health needed. They're just going to let it go and just let themselves get farmed down. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty okay lead. Shadow Malamar into the Claydol. Malamar obviously has a huge pacing advantage. I don't really want to commit a shield in this matchup. I could easily stay in, but I decided to get fancy with it and make a catch onto Diggersby. Diggersby, of course, going to be resisting the Rock Tomb. I'm now going to be debuffed, and out comes Primeape. Primeape going to play to the CMP tie here. Let's see if they are actually running close combat. The regular ones usually do, and they are. That's going to do some pretty significant damage. In comes the Shadow Malamar, and Shadow Malamar is going to look to shield once and farm all the way down, because then I have a ton of energy loaded for whatever my opponent has in the back. Are they going to bring back in the Claydol? I don't think it's very likely. It's an Azumarill, and I'm in trouble. Giving up Swap cost me this game, but I'm actually not out of it yet. As long as this Bulldoze debuffs, then even after the Rock Tomb, the Play Rough will be able to knock out, but we don't get the 50-50, and that, unfortunately, is actually going to cost us this game. Rock Tomb, I know shield because I know it's only ever going to be the Rock Tomb, but now with my attack at -1 and no Bulldoze debuff, this Play Rough does not knock out, and I'm forced to fire off a 3rd charge attack. So the Bulldoze into the Claydol is going to pick up the knockout. I can send in the Malamar. This is basically a full health Azumarill, and let's see what Shadow Malamar can do. Shadow Malamar is so low. Even though this is a game that I'm going to lose because I decided to catch out of a good matchup, let's take a moment to appreciate the damage that Shadow Malamar outputs here. Shadow Malamar, these Psywaves add up a lot on the Azumarill. I land the foul play. Now I get to go for the harder hitting superpower, and this would put them pretty well into the red HP. They're going to end up shielding, getting the farm down, and exiting with a move to be able to take the win against the Tinkaton. But I still included the battle despite my misplay of catching out of the matchup, just to show that the energy from Shadow Malamar, even when resisted, is just absolutely cracked. Hopping into the final match, we've got the battle of the squids, Shadow Malamar versus regular Malamar. And in this matchup, typically you can just go for double foul play if one of the Malamars is Shadow. You don't really need a superpower. I know that since I have a very high rank, I'm probably going to lose the charge attack priority tie. So here, I'm actually going to go for a catch onto the Diggersby, and I get a quick attack sneak. That's very valuable, as now I'm able to outpace my opponent if they stay in. They are staying in. I just get to go for the Fire Punch and put a ton of pressure on my opponent immediately. Fire Punch is going to be shielded. I'm not expecting them to bait here. I'm expecting them to superpower and dip, so I will end up committing the shield. That's the superpower. In comes the Shadow Blastoise. They did get the one-turn switch in there, so it looks like the switch button may have been clicked slightly too late, so they weren't able to get the 0. Their attack is debuffed, and because of that, I'm making a catch onto Tinkaton. Tinkaton is more than happy to absorb debuffed Hydro Cannons. Blastoise going to be firing off another move here. Blastoise going for Hydro Cannon number 2. I'm just going to farm up a ton with the Tinkaton. And my opponent is now going to be able to pick up the knockout, because I didn't ever really want energy on the Tinkaton. I just want energy on the Malamar. In the back, it's their own Tinkaton, and Shadow's superpower is going to be so threatening here. Superpower is going to be shielded. There's the switch to the Diggersby, and I know that I tanked the play rough here, so I'm very okay letting this go, because landing the Scorching Sands means that I will win the game. It was a Bulldoze bait. They did actually get the debuff. Scorching Sands, big damage onto my opponent. Now I go for the Fire Punch. They CMP tie, and that means as long as I shield, I can lock in damage, KO the Tinkaton, and my Shadow Malamar is going to be able to sweep this endgame. So Fire Punch is going to be able to pick up the KO. I'm switching out here. They're going to send in the Blastoise, and the Shadow Psywave damage is just too oppressive. Down goes Blastoise. Shadow Malamar, my goodness. This thing is absolutely incredible. All in all, please play this rocket event. Do those male psychic rocket grunts and get a good Shadow Malamar, because during this event you can TM away frustration. So it's really important to try and get one during this event, because this thing is an absolute force to be reckoned with in the Open Great League. I imagine it's also going to be very solid with XL Candies in the Ultra League, but even if you only play the Great League, get Shadow Malamar. We know and have known for quite a while how strong the regular Malamar is, because it's just incredibly flexible. Its pacing is great, and with the Shadow, honestly, I feel the Shadow is even just a little bit better, because the Shadow, even in its bad matchups, its charge attacks, its damage just goes absolutely everywhere. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.